again, thumbs up. All good. Cool. Hello guys, thanks so much for coming. So yeah, I will quickly introduce everyone who is here. So this is Richard Bazley, who directed both of the films we just watched. And then we have John E. Fry, who was director of photography on both films, edited and Steadicam operated and produced, I believe. And then we have Connor Wulfric, who starred and wrote Censure. And then we have Vivian Taylor, who starred in both films. And we also have Adrian Chibbers, who worked on the score, sound design, and also wrote On Top of the World, which was the song that we had in the first film. So yeah, thank you all for coming. So I'll sort of start off with just some general questions that can kind of apply to both of the films we just watched. So you seem like a very well-connected crew, a sort of tight little unit.
Yeah.
I know some of you were out for a lovely Italian meal before the screening today. How did you all connect? How did you all meet and sort of make these films happen?
Okay, so it's taken a while to build a team like this. It doesn't happen just like that. It takes, I've had numerous projects put through, trying to get good people together, but you meet people along the way, and then you bank it, and you think, yeah, one day, there might be a possibility. In fact, AD, we've known each other a long time, probably too long, you can say, right? But we go way back. And
not living in the same village.
Same village, that's it. We're not related, are we? No. But AD gave me a CD. It was music one day going back, and I thought it was fantastic. And I pulled the car over and just listened to the whole thing, and I knew then that it would be great music for a film score, which a lot of it is in Censure, edited and added. Actually, I might as well go through everyone whilst we're here. Then let's see, John, we were going to work on a film called The Clock. Another film that didn't happen, and it happens a lot in the industry, but at least we got to know each other and got on, and we liked each other's work. When we came up with this idea to make a film, I said, let's go ahead and make this film. And we did. There's lots of other films where there's budgets, the money falls through. We didn't really have much for the first film.
We didn't need any money for a budgetless shot.
That's it, exactly. So we just went and did it. Hence the local shots. Everything's local. It makes it cheaper, obviously. But we're blessed. So let's do everyone first here. Connor I was going to direct another film that didn't happen, a horror film in Ireland. And I didn't know you were just up the road in Marlborough. And it was a fabulous, really intense performance. So I remember that. That's probably about a year before. So when we started thinking of this idea, I had you in mind right away. So that's how that happened. And then when I was looking for, at that time, Vivian, it was an off-screen voice. So I was going through show reels after show reels, but I needed a voice that was quite cutting. Because it's the stepsister, and she's really. I thought this is perfect, and contacted Vivian, and she could do it remotely from Glasgow, and then luckily on the second film we got her to come back. But, I'll pass you on.
So for those of you who don't know, Richard, early in his career, was a Disney animator, and he's worked on films like Pocahontas, Hercules, and The Iron Giant as well. So a lot of films people at my age grew up with, and I was just wondering what sort of led you, with such a strong background in animation, to then progress into live action when you began making your own short films.
So don't tell me how old you were when you saw Pocahontas. That happens a lot. So yes, we don't actually, when we do these screenings, I'm tempted to say ex-Disney animator because it would attract a lot of people, but if people came along expecting a musical, they're going to get a bit of a shock. So we play that down, but the background is invaluable in terms of filmmaking, in quality filmmaking, all across the board, from working with actors, understanding character, stories, storyboarding, the whole thing really. So it gives you, they even used to have classes for us there at lunchtimes. It was like being at university. It was an incredible place to be. But I was a 2D classical animator, and when just before I came back from England, Toy Story came out, and that changed the whole war game. It became CGI, which is a different thing. All our salaries, which had doubled when DreamWorks set up, were then halved again, and a lot more people could do it. And I did do CGI for a while, but it never ticked the boxes for me. It just didn't feel as satisfying, because 2D hand-drawn animation you have your hands on, plus you're doing, you might spend weeks on just a few seconds. And I wanted to do something bigger picture, and live action's a lot faster. And animation's really expensive. Richard Williams spent 25 years doing The Cobbler and the Thief, 25 years. And he did big commercials in the 70s in England. And that was his one feature, and he was taking so long. Warner Brothers said, we'll give you $3 million to finish it, but you've got to finish it by this date. And he didn't finish it, and they took it off him and totally re-edited it and ruined it. But anyway, it takes a long time. So live action, the filming is quick. Pre-production.
How long do you think Censure took to film, out of interest, anyway?
3 weeks.
3 weeks?
2 days.
2 days? You're closer with 2 days. 3 days.
5 days.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, of course, you've got all the story. It takes a while to get together, and you play around with it and develop it. And then you've got the post-production, can take a while. So, but if we'd done a 40-minute film in animation, we'd still be working on it. So anyway, so after years of doing kids stuff, Disney was great, but when I came back, it was mainly TV series work. Horrid Henry, Farm and Sam. I got sick of it. So I know. So, but when you've done almost 100 shows, hence I've gone the other way now. Other way, to move in a different direction.
I'm sure, like many of you, I really enjoyed seeing lots of our local sort of landmarks sort of on the film, especially Box in black and white was beautiful. Caution Court in the Snow. What made you decide to film locally? Was that important to you to film locally?
Yeah, I mean, two reasons. I mean, one reason it's cheap and it's local, but actually it's there. I mean, you can go for a walk. People will recognise things. The tunnel near Box and lots of locations. It's just gorgeous. The bunker up in the hills and that lovely shot where you pan down from Box Hill down to the shops. It's all here. They come from America, and they come from Hollywood. Laycock, they filmed Harry Potter. Castle King, they filmed Warhorse. And just across the road here, Stanley Kubrick in Caution Court filmed Barry Lyndon. Several of the shots, a lot of people don't know that one, but so it's all here. So if you, because we're on a budget, I try and keep it in 1 or 2 locations. On Confines, we had Caution, but we also went to Rosslon, and we played a cello. So we mix it up a bit. But yeah, we're spoiled for choice. That's the big reason.
So in both of the short films, music seemed to play a really big part. Particularly in Censure, I almost felt that music was almost its own character, sort of approaching on the film. I just wanted to know sort of how key music was to you, both of those films.
Pass it down to
Censure and Confines. Censure initially, as Richard said, we met because we live in the same village. And I gave him this CD of this work that I was doing with a collaboration of many musicians that are based locally here. And musicians that are very, very, I guess, famous in the world of music, and which include, I don't know, Nick Mason, Pink Floyd, Caroline Dale with various LCO and string, ECO, and so she was major on this. My partner, Daniel Penny. Anyway, it was a collection of many very famous people that I've worked with in the past, and there was no budget for this film, so it's very difficult when you approach people saying, "Would you be interested in collaborating with this film?" There's no money. But the good side of this is, when you're dealing with maybe people that are the money's not important for them, but the artistic value is. They all came on board. So this is a collaboration of many friends of mine that I've worked with for many years, and we just enjoyed the medium and working with Richard and John and the actors and the script was just lots of fun, and we made the most of I guess my relationship with these great musicians that live locally, and I'm very grateful for that, it was a lovely union between the script and the photography and the whole union of the film. So, in a way, I was very privileged, and hopefully it was, it expanded with the film of these very, very, very well-known musicians that were on this tiny little low-budget film, and so it was a joy to do, and they're a joy to work with. So. And I hope that we do many more.
And just while you keep the microphone, can you just tell us a bit more about your musical background and what it was like working on film score?
My musical background? Well, my musical background is, I guess, like I said, you're working with locally. I live in Box, and it's very well known for a big studio owned by Peter Gabriel, and I have a relationship with him, and then other people, Nick Mason, who lives in Caution, and these classical string players that also live locally, and but they live locally, but they obviously work internationally, and we're very privileged to and I'm very privileged to know them and work with them. So when Richard approached me and said that, there's this idea for a film, it was I just said, are you up for it? And they all agreed. For no money, but they don't need the money. No, it's not the point, but it's what was the point? What was your question?
Have you worked on any films before? What was it like?
I've done lots of TV work before, so there's a few friends in the audience here that also worked with, that medium, and so it's the same thing. Working to picture. Music to picture is a really great thing, interesting thing, because you're as soon as you have a picture, your music that you would normally, let's say, produce to a CD or to just normal or live performance is very, very different to a film. And what I love about producing music to a film is that you can strip back all the I guess the sort of kitchen, just have everything in the mix, to strip down to just cello or just percussion or just guitar, and it's a really different experience, one which I really, really love, and it gives a different take on if you did it just for a public release. And that's what I really love about making music for film, is you can strip it right down, because of course if you just have everything in there, it doesn't necessarily make sense to the picture.
So Vivian, you were in both films, and I wanted to get your perspective on, obviously one of them was pretty much entirely a voice role, and then the other was almost entirely physical with quite minimal dialogue. Did you approach those very differently? What was it like on set, sort of, or in the sound booth, sort of getting into character? Just wanted to get your perspective on how you approached them.
So primarily Censure was obviously a voice role, and Richard approached me on Instagram, of all things. And I remember thinking, really? And then I looked him up and went, oh, this is the real deal, excellent. So we had a chat, and I'd said that I could do RP as well. And I said, do you want her to be Glaswegian, or would you rather, she talk like this? It was terribly prim and proper. And we tried several ways. No, it's not. It was shush. Anyway, we decided that we would make her Scottish, and I'm lucky enough to have a home studio. So we had the script, and Richard said if you could record these lines, but feel free to improvise, do different takes, do different intonations. If you want to really go for it, do it. And I had so much fun. I really did, because this was in the middle of lockdown. So all my work had been cancelled. So Richard came to me at the right time and actually gave me hope that I was going to work again. So I had a great time in my wee television room, which is full of junk and a piano and boxes of old things. And in the middle of it all, I've got my sound booth. And it's a very cluttered room, but it's good because it means it's nice and soundproof, and it's got good acoustics. And we recorded lots of different takes, and as I said, I just felt so good to be working again because everything had been wiped out work-wise. And I just emailed them off to Richard, and then he came back with notes. I said, this time you really go for it, or maybe take it down a bit, or just change your intonation here or there. So that was absolutely brilliant fun. And
can you give us an RP Willy Cream?
Okay, Willy cream. It's not Willy cream, it's face cream.
No,
Golly. It's not Willy cream, Aaron, it's face cream. Anyway, so that was totally different to when I was filming Confines, and yes, as you said, it was very visual, and it was so lovely. I just literally met Luke. Within 10 minutes, we were walking hand in hand, staring into each other's eyes, all lovey-dovey. It was very romantic. I didn't know him, but we had a great time.
It was actually written dialogue for you at that time. And what I think what we wanted to do was, because you have done improv before, I knew you could do it. I wanted to explain the film a little bit more. So what I did was take you and Luke and just briefly say this is the situation, and I let them just do their thing.
Yeah.
And you can only do that with really good actors. And I knew it would work, and I felt it worked. So
well, yeah, we had a great time in the kitchen doing the scene about having a baby, and we did a really quite long scene, but we really got into it. I ended up in buckets of tears, like I did at the end watching it, just there. I'm a very emotional person, and it was a really great process. From being in the park, the snow had been delivered to perfect timing. We got there, it snowed the night before, and it really added the finishing touches to the film. So, in Scotland that day, it wasn't warm, but it wasn't freezing. It was actually sunny. So to come and fly down here and for it to be snowy and freezing was really magical, actually. And we had a great time filming. And then, as I said, we did the kitchen scene, and that was just powerful stuff, and I thought, yes, I'm acting here. So 2 completely different roles, but both equally as fulfilling to me as an actress. Thank you.
And that peacock hit all his marks.
I was going to say, wonderful stuff, Peacock. My caution. So I'm sure it's not kind of lost on everyone that both films sort of dealt with sort of isolated men, essentially. One very, literally isolated, and then the other sort of isolated within a family and within a community. I'd be interested to hear from Connor and John and Richard, is sort of male mental health something that permeates in your work generally, or was it something you were exploring for the first time?
Do you want me to kick off?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's probably my fault. I found it quite cathartic because I had these ideas and I wanted them to, they had to be small ideas, and these sort of ideas popped up in my head, and I've worked with Neil Bazley, who couldn't make it tonight. And I've passed the Blind House in Box numerous times. I thought, well, that'd be an interesting place to film. And I went in and had a look, there's a grill in the back with a little bit of light that comes through. I thought, well, that would look nice, you know, with somebody sitting there. So I came up with this idea that this guy's trapped in his mind, and I wanted to visualise that. So we did that with the Blind House. And the other thing we did actually was with his costume. Nobody really knows this. I wanted it to reflect that he's like a prisoner. So I didn't want him in a stripy suit, because it would look like Monty Python or something, you know. Or I didn't want people, or a bright orange suit. So it's actually based on Steve McQueen. So the outfit is actually a Steve McQueen outfit. And even the shoes don't have laces, like a prisoner. So there's lots of detail in there that you won't see, but you'll feel, you sense it. And then I didn't want him to be, just have it all the time on him inside. I wanted to break out of it at some point. So then I came up with the idea of the maze, and ran that past Neil. And of course, when you have a script, it might be just a couple of sentences, but when you film, you can expand it and storyboard it. You know, if you have a car chase and it says car chase in a script, it's just a line, but you can really do something with it. You know, you just got to use your imagination. So, so we have the maze. So he's still trapped in his mind right there. He's going round and round. And there was actually a reason I'll quickly go into why I used the maze, because I watched this show called Stutz with Jonah Hill, and he's interviewing his therapist, and he does these diagrams. He draws this maze like this. He's got Parkinson's, it's sort of like a really wobbly line. And the diagrams to help Jonah Hill. And he says, well, we get stuck in this maze like this, and he just draws a line past it. He says, you just got to move on. And it sounds very simple, but it's a visual diagram. So that's what made me think of the maze for that, you see. So there's lots of things, and then obviously, actually I'll let Connor talk about your preparation for censure with the start of with Gareth Gates, and how we did a lot of stuff on video first before we even filmed.
So I think, yeah, the Gareth Gates thing is very interesting, because you can see when you watch somebody like Gareth Gates, he's very locked in is the phrase that I'm talking about, because you can see the kind of, he wants to express things and he's conscious that people could see he's trying to express them, and that all adds to the kind of the poison of it, and that's what I think, that's what I really felt with Aaron, and we would discuss it quite a lot and say, like the moments when he's at the dinner table, he can't get the words out, and the only time when he can get the words out is when he's got his freedom, and it kind of, it's a very interesting mix when you can't relate to that level. I had a great upbringing. I had fantastic parents, fantastic sister, and my entire family. I just couldn't relate to that kind of mental torture. Yeah. So I just had to take what little bits I could find from my own personal life and add it to that. But I think every bloke in the room will identify with feeling a bit locked in, like you can't say what you want to say and you can't express it, and I think that helped to kind of formulate the kind of person that Aaron was. The dinner table scene especially was very weird, because Ange, who sadly can't be with us tonight, would be, because obviously, yeah, all the characters, no one else was there, so I went to try and imagine, and I hadn't heard Vivian's wonderful performance by then, so I'm trying to imagine the fury and the pain and the anger and everything, whilst Angie's off screen going, not quite the same level of reaction.
Was she pointing to be the side of where they were sitting, so you had to remember?
Yeah, we had
where
just the chairs.
Yeah.
Tom Conti's voice was on there, so you have to look at
Yeah, it was just 3 chairs to look at and go, well, that's okay, that's, and then try and think of the eye lines and everything like that. So yeah, it was a bit tricky, but that was the. I think it's a subject now, especially in men's mental health, very close to everybody's heart, and I think I guess that's why a lot of people come away from that and say, you can relate to it, you can kind of feel for the guy, and I'm like, really? He's a complete nutter, I think. He's completely lost it, obviously. But you can still, I read it and I was like, I kind of get it. Yeah, as dangerous as that is to say. But, John, I don't know if you have anything to add to that?
Not especially, only in the way that we...
In terms of filming,
yeah.
you're on one character all the time. So
Yeah, exactly. So trying to exemplify with pictures that sort of narrowing of his mind. So there's two long shots in Censure, with the one at the dinner table and one of the ones where he sat on the sofa, and the camera is rolling in ever so slowly. So it starts with a nice wide shot, oh, he's happy on the sofa, listening to his music, or sat at the dinner table, and it ends up without... I put some cutaways in one of them, I think, but we shot them as two entirely unbroken shots, so that we can see. I was trying to show with the camera move how his whole world is collapsing and shrinking in as we come in on his face. And this is just, it's going to reach a boiling point at some stage. And in the bathtub as well, that's also pushing in very slowly on him to, again, just see how his whole world is being constrained and restricted by everything somewhat out of his control. So that was approaching that, and
I
then...
remember you saying, "Sure, you want to stay on this so long?" You're like, yeah. I said, "Yeah," and I didn't want you to turn around either, and I was just to look forward, because I knew what was going to be said in the dialogue, because it was all about the dialogue then, and him trying to shut it out. So sometimes less is more. So you see a lot of some filmmakers throw the kitchen sink at it, and
cutting every 5 seconds, blah, 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 and we thought, actually, this is someone who's, your mind doesn't do that, your mind doesn't jump around too much, especially when you're in that sort of cycle, that spiral going down, so actually having those longer shots made that point, didn't they? And luckily they were interesting enough to keep you visually interested as well for that amount of time. So one of them, I think it's over 4 minutes, one of those shots. It doesn't feel like it, does it? No, which is amazing. And then Confines, similar again, he's stuck in his own head, but it's a much more of a jumble, isn't it? The whole film is trying to show how his mind is racing around and getting upset and confused and unhappy and sad and everything's overpowering him. So we shot that to try and make that work that way as well and edit it.
the funny thing is, it was really intense filming in there because it was bloody freezing, and we had layers and layers on. And I said to Luke, "This is what you're wearing, this T-shirt." And he got pretty grumpy because but it actually helped. It helped the intensity. And even at one time, John was in his face like this, and he said, "Would you stop fiddling? Stop doing this?" You said, "Well, I've got to adjust the camera." So it was intense, but it worked, I think.
Just have another quick question for Connor, which is, there is a scene in Censure where you vindictively eat a whole tub of ice cream. How bad was the brain freeze?
Tell them what you do to do that. The trips to the same.
My ignorance is bliss, as they say. When Richard explained what we were going to do with that, I thought, it's fine, everyone eats ice cream, it's no problem, I can eat ice cream. And we thawed the tub, so you could squeeze it. And everyone, you think, I could, if I was leisurely sat there watching Netflix eating a tub of ice cream, easy. But they said, right, we've got to go for it and get it in one, because obviously once the lid's off, that's kind of it, that's the big moment. So I thought, right, full commitment, let's go for it. And I thought, again, I'll probably get the whole tub done. I don't know, I didn't count, but probably 5 or 6, and I was head over the sink, trying my best not to throw up, and I've never felt brain freeze like it, honestly. It sounds so dramatic, eating, poor me, eating ice cream on a film set. It was, and then the worst thing was, we finished it and I was completely, and I've done gas chambers and parva spray in the eye and everything, for the right reasons, not, being arrested or anything, for fun, yeah, why not? And that was worse, it was so intense. So, yeah, honestly. So I'd come back to the table, kind of helped with it, really.
Explain that, what were you doing in the forces?
I served in the forces for a bit, this is why I wasn't, I'm not an ex-criminal or anything like that. there's nothing wrong with that, obviously, but yeah, we'd spend, I don't know how long John had just...
Shoot it slightly differently as well. Yeah. Without...
So, although you don't think about it, you see brightness and contrast, right? And contrast doesn't just come from black and white, it comes from colour. Colour contrast, you stand an orange thing next to a green thing, that's a colour contrast, whereas if you turn it all to black and white, that all becomes the same. So you have to, as soon as we decided we were going to shoot it black and white, that changed how we were going to shoot and light everything, particularly lighting very specifically, because, you know, otherwise, again, all the colour contrast disappears and you end up you lose a load of the contrast that's already in a normal colour image, so you have to create that contrast elsewhere. So it doesn't look like it, but there's usually quite a few lights on Connor, especially on that scene at the end. I think there are 4 or 5 different lights on you for that, just to pick up all those extra little bits and give shadow where it wouldn't be, because, you know, obviously contrast is from forming the shadow and the light. So yeah, it made quite a big difference to how we shot it.
This is why you get a good DOP, and that's what we've got right here.
So, Adrian, I just wanted to ask about how you approached the music for each film differently. Obviously, as you mentioned earlier, CENSURE had lots of sort of string accompaniment, while Confines had more of a sort of like almost electronic sort of ambience to it. I just wanted to know how you came to those decisions.
Essentially there was the same lineup of musicians, but as I said before, with stripping back the music, when I was approached with Confines, a shorter film and much more essential proper dialogue, monologue. You know, you can't have. I thought that it didn't need a tremendous amount of musical changes, and it needed much more soundscape, really. So there was lots of underscore rather than in-your-face sort of music, because there was so much dialogue. You know, it's an interesting approach, that, because being a musician, you know, you want to pile it all on. You want to sort of be dynamic with your with the music. But when I saw the rushes back, I could tell that it just, you know, there was a difference. That it just needed to be really stripped back, and much more of an underscore with much more dramatic. Moments where the dialogue is sort of stopped, and there was a point where on the script where it was poignant, and then you lift the music up and then really drop it back down. So it was a completely different approach, and something that I actually learnt on this film. I mean, I think that. Like I said, the impulse is for as a musician to it's all about the music. Forget about the images.
Use all the toys.
Exactly, you know. But so it was a massive different approach, and certainly with the film festivals, it's interesting that with Confines. It wasn't really music, it was a soundscape, even though I felt there was lots of music in there. But because it was such a sort of low level with the massive dialogue, it wasn't really considered as a music score, whereas the first film was much more elevated music score, because there was a lot more space for the music. And so... I mean, yes, the first film won lots of awards for the music because there was lots of space for the music, whereas you know Confines, there was not so much space, and it was considered much more of a well, this is not, is this a score, or is it just a soundscape, and that's what the difference is, even though actually There was lots of music in the second film, as much really as the first film, but it had to be really, really low level and stripped right back because there was so much dialogue.
So I'll ask two more questions and then I'll throw it open to anyone else who wants to ask questions. The films, I kind of end quite differently in terms of, I think, how we are left feeling. One of them, I feel fairly bleak in its outcome, and then the other, hopeful in that it, literally has light at the end of the tunnel. I was just curious, Richard, in between the making of those films or through the process of making them, do you feel your perspective kind of changed, your outlook on things? No.
No, it's all about the story and what works for the script and the idea. And so the first one, it was dark, and it was I had very much Hitchcock warm mind in the twists that he has, very Hitchcockian.
There's that final cup of tea, isn't there, on the nightstand in the last shot.
That's the question. The second one, there's an element of hope for those that are more hopeful out there, hopefully. So, but again, it's all personal circumstances, and it's just all about what's right for the idea in the film.
So, final question from me. Confines has like a really great line that stuck with me, and it was to do with the pandemic. Which was, humans in their absence of one another seem not to have missed the warmth but the cold. And I think it is quite haunting. And I feel like a lot of people probably might feel that way post-pandemic in terms of, seeing the certain things that have happened in the world and feeling that shared community that began to grow has sort of dissipated a bit. I just wanted to know what effect the pandemic and the years since has sort of had on each of you, if you're happy to share, as sort of respective artists and in your own right.
Where should we start?
Should we go down?
So how the pandemic affect? Well, it's interesting. I think a lot of people reassessed their lives and what they wanted to do with it because you had so much time to think. And my wife will laugh. I ended up doing a lot of stuff in the garden and switching off and having a complete break.
He does have his own bar in the garden.
Yeah, you're not supposed to mention that, but yeah. The gardening became a project with the bar. That's right. But the great thing about having a place that you can go to like that is you can go there and have there's a stream down there. I can go down there and you can gather your thoughts and come up with lots of ideas. So for me, it's a great place to go and think up cool stuff. So for me, the pandemic. Obviously it's a bad thing, but it gave people an opportunity just to reassess and think what is of value. There's a comedian called Jimmy Carr, it's quite dark, and he was saying about how, if somebody has 6 months to go, suddenly they pack everything in. He's saying, well, we should do that anyway. We don't know when we're going to go, we should just pack it in. But that's where I'm coming from on that, I'll pass along.
Pandemic for me, we were stuck in our little village. It's not quite as pretty as this one, but it's very nice in South Wiltshire, and made me appreciate the environment I live in, I think, and how little I enjoyed going to London working, because I do a lot of filming up there. And ever since I've avoided London jobs, but I've actively tried to shoot more locally so that I can spend more time at home and actually have a home life and be part of my community, whereas so many of certainly people I grew up with and looked up to hugely as I was coming up and helped me through my career, have had several wives and never saw their children and had no place in the community in which they lived, and I didn't really want that. I wanted to be part of my little world where we live here in Wiltshire. It's actually rather nice, and going to London isn't. So that sort of made me reassess that again and look more locally. And also it had an unexpected bonus actually through lockdown, in that because people couldn't stay even after lockdown, actually when people couldn't stay away in hotels and things, it meant that I made more local connections who were looking for a camera person or a DOP or a Steadicam operator physically nearby, which never happens. You know, I lived 5 minutes from Wilton, where they shoot The Crown and basically anything of any period. So it seems to be shot at Wilton House, and I've never shot there except for Lord Pembroke's sister's wedding. That's, you know, I was a local cameraman for that. But yeah, since pandemic happened, suddenly calls are coming in for people geographically located in these areas, rather than passing colleagues from London on the motorway coming down to where I live and me going the other way. So so that it was actually useful from that stage, and nice to be able to shoot a bit closer to home and not spend all my time on the motorway.
I had a very novel experience. I had a full-time job during lockdown, which the idea of furlough, when somebody said you can be paid to not work, was a complete liberation for me. And of course, it was shortly lived, because we all know everybody suffered during lockdown when it sort of kicked in, what it really meant in isolation and all that sort of thing. But I found it was very, it kind of pushed me into a creative corner. I couldn't do it. I was working at the gym at the time, so I couldn't do any of that work. I couldn't kind of I was managing the gym, I couldn't do any of that stuff. And I just had all of the excuses I needed to just do anything creative. So I did some kind of videos, I did some screenwriting as well. I did a little a sitcom script. So I think I really enjoyed the first bit. I was living with mum and dad, so I was getting just weighted on hand and foot. I did very, very good. But then I think the second, and how many were there? 2 or 3 or 4? I can't remember. But as it started to wear a little bit more. But even then, it adds perspective, I think, and you kind of pick up on your experiences during that time and how your friends are and the frustrations that you feel. And I think it all kind of, yeah, it added some perspective, as you said, and also added a bit of kind of fuel for work in the future, I guess.
Well, for me, lockdown was a strange one, because obviously I do acting, but I work a lot in the events industry as well, presenting and hosting and running registration desks at conferences and things like that. And basically I just saw everything get cancelled from my diary, and I royally freaked out and thought, what am I going to do? And then I thought, hang on, everyone's in the same boat, relax, it's going to be okay. So I did relax, and spent lots of time with my parents and my dog, which was absolutely lovely. But then I discovered new jobs, like virtual conferences on Zoom. And I was a conference coordinator for about a year and a half, which was absolutely amazing, and learned all sorts of new skills. I'd never even heard about Zoom before the lockdown, and that became my main income for most of lockdown, which was great. I also learned how to DJ, which was great fun, and I've used that quite a lot since. And just used it to connect with new people. I don't think it really took off, but there was it's still there, a social media network called Clubhouse. And I made lots of film connections on that, and I'm now still in touch with all of them. So I've done lots of networking, and hopefully have some more potential projects because of that time where I could just stop and reflect and connect with people, and we were all going through the same things, which was just absolutely brilliant. And I think it just was a time where people were brought together and we helped each other. It was a really scary time, but a really nice time for me as well. And I used it as a reset button and decided to use the time to learn new skills and think about what I really wanted to do in life, and that's what I'm doing right now.
Did you do any more voiceover work?
I also did lots of voiceover work and did stuff for American clients as well, who I'd connected with on Clubhouse. Yeah, pretty good. It's quite a good site, actually. Go for it.
Politically and socially, lockdown had a very negative effect for me. Anyway, but that's a whole new story. But creatively, in my industry, and I would imagine the same with filmmakers and anyone in the creative industry, it had a very positive effect. And so there was all of a sudden there was all these colleagues and people that were approaching me and my friends for these projects that probably they wouldn't have done if they were not restricted with not being able to socialise and do it naturally. I mean, you know, I come from also a musical background, which is very much a live performance. So that was for me, I freaked out with not being able to contact people, you know. I hated online, I absolutely hated online interaction and sort of stayed away apart from social media of do you fancy being involved in this music project? And so I engaged with that, and I could see that it was a very vibrant, with my colleagues, there was a very vibrant scene with creativity and these projects that probably wouldn't have happened without that lockdown scenario. But personally, I can say that I hated every moment of not just, I'm a people person, you know, and I need to be in the studio, like looking and talking and communicating personally. So being online for me was not a good thing. But you know, with my peer group, I could see there was a very, very positive side to it.
Okay, thank you guys, and yeah, I'm glad that it allowed these films to be created in that time. And yeah, fantastic. Did anyone want to ask any questions?
Richard does.
Oh, go on.
Oh, Ted does.
Hello. No, I'm just. You mentioned about. I enjoyed both films immensely. You mentioned about the fact it actually took 3 days to film, or one of them, and I'm just intrigued about the timing because I know Box very well, and because of the dismal weather, it actually did look quite like dour at certain points, which I thought was really quite clever. Of course, and in the second film, you were very lucky with the snow. You can't engineer that one. So my question is, on the low budget film, did you time your filming to seek or the possibility of the weather not being great? Right. It might have been a different film in the summertime.
Yeah, no, we were just very, very lucky. You cannot predict the weather at all. Now, if you've got a budget or a decent budget, you can reshoot another day or cancel. We were pretty much locked in with what we got.
We did look at the forecast in the morning, so if it was going to rain after lunch, we knew we had to try and get those outdoor stuff done before then, and likewise the other way around. But yeah, the snow was just not.
There's a lot, because I've had other films where it's been bad luck, and the snow, in fact, we were going to film in Manchester, and I helped raise quite a bit of money for that one, and we went up and it snowed, and it shut the whole thing down, and we've never been able to make it since. It's gone.
So what time of the year was Censure filmed?
Oh my goodness. I'm just going back now. Winter. Yeah, it's winter. So the funny thing is with the tunnel, I've walked through there a million times. It's a really cool tunnel. I thought that looked great, but it rained a bit, and you had water on the floor and the reflections. So we lucked out, and we had a wind effect. Yeah, I remember that was a nice one. But what sticks out in my mind was John. I'd forgotten your wellies. So you wore your wife's wellies, was it? With the flowers on? Yeah. And it's on the BBC homepage. Yeah. Just tickled me up.
And she hadn't told me that they weren't entirely waterproof anymore.
And then with confines, because of my previous experience with snow, we didn't know it was coming at all, and then it started. And I had to go down to the airport to pick Vivian up, and I was terrified that she's coming down that it wouldn't land, and we'd have to reschedule. And I was doing a lot. I don't do schedules, but I was doing schedules because we have to share a lot of the burden. Yeah. So, but I drove down to Bristol Airport, and the snow had all gone. I thought, well, damn it! If the snow's going to full, I went down and see it. But when I drove back to Corsham, it was still magically there. It looked amazing. And those are the shots you see. It looks absolutely phenomenal. And I've worked on films like Blind Witch in the Wardrobe, all green screened, with snow machines and props and everything to make it look like winter. We got the real deal there. But we were just very, very lucky. But great question.
Ooh, I'm stuck on a shoe. Anyone else? Yes, sir.
Yeah, it'd be really interesting to hear about the sort of shot processing on CENSURE in terms of how much of it you can plan up front and how much of it turns into opportunistic when you get to location, and particularly around sort of grabbing cutaways and thinking we can do stuff in the edit, we get bits and bobs. So how much is sort of locked in and how much you sort of using the space as well, and sort of working shots if you got them.
It was. I know, it's probably about 50-50. So we'd had a walk around box before, hadn't we, and looked at locations and thought where shots would do. And I take some pictures on my phone so I know what sort of rough angles we can get on things. But then, of course, then you add Connor and the way he moves through a space. So yeah, probably a bit more than 50-50 actually. There's probably more like 60 or 70-30 opportunistic, because all those wonderful environments are there, and you just want to shoot everything. So you see a great view and you put Connor in it. You know, there was a lot of that. But we knew what we had to, the story we had to tell. So as long as we can put him in an environment which adds to that, rather than just sort of elongates it, it was a lot of opportunistic. But we knew the areas we needed to go, and we knew the script we needed to cover, and then it was find the shot that does it the best.
Normally, I storyboard a lot of stuff, and animation things are storyboarded to a ridiculous time. And in live action, you don't have to do as many. You know, on a TV series, sometimes like 1,000 drawings. You know, on a 10-minute episode. But with live action, you don't have to do that many. And I'd had a few. I did a few and thumbnails on. I had a few projects fall through where I'm still owed a lot of money from where I storyboarded, probably like 20 grand on a film that never got made. So now I do a shot list, which is a lot quicker, and thumbnails. If we get a bigger budget, we'll do, actually the next one, I want to do more extensive boards, but it takes time, it takes a lot of time. So a lot of the shots, some of them also are in my head, so they weren't in the script. The ones at Corsham Court, I wanted some shots of a couple having a good time in the past. So I took John up there and showed him the views and the shots that we wanted, and those are what you see there. And actually John will then actually do quite a few opportunity shots. Says, well, here's a good one, let's grab that. So we do. So it's a combination.
I think we have time for maybe one more. Steph.
It's sort of related to that question actually. One of the things I enjoyed in both films was your close-ups. That frame is really tight. And for an audience member, that's very effective, and you're writing with the emotion there. And I guess my question is, do you storyboard that in advance? Do you know before you start filming exactly how long you're going to be in with those wonderful?
So you see those shots of Charlotte. We don't go really, really in close until that scene when he comes down dressed as a woman, and it pans up to his face. And I said to John, just get in his face, and he gets all the lighting, beautifully shot, really amazing acting, absolutely fantastic. And you get all those little nuances in Connor's face. Same with Luke in Confines. We got on close on that to be claustrophobic. So it's all for effect, and Tarantino's brilliant at it. Brilliant. So it's about choices and where you do it. So you don't do it all the way through. One of my frustrations years ago was suddenly you had so much camera movement all the time. It was the trend. It was just move. Instead of making a selective choice when that would work. So it's about choices. So I'm glad you like those shots, because I'm quite pleased with them.
We'll squeeze one more in. Gentleman in top left.
Sorry, I'm an hour late for work because I wanted to say this. So I noticed when I was watching Censure, that the decision to not film the family in sort of very last scene was really fresh. I noticed it in the first scene when they were all together, and so I was looking to see if that was going to continue throughout the whole film, which it did. And obviously that creates atmosphere and mood and draws you more into that character, doesn't it? But then I realised towards the end of the film that comes with a massive bonus, and that is that it probably saved you hours or days of filming because you didn't have to constantly reset and film all the other angles. So did you just work on both of those things before you came to film it? Or?
The idea came out of lockdown when we couldn't get close to people and everything had to be, separated. And so I came up with that idea, how do we do film cheaply and effectively? And it actually became a really creative idea. There was another film that I was going to work on that wouldn't have been anywhere near as good, that would have cost a hell of a lot, with tons of actors. It doesn't matter how much, it's all about the idea and what you do with it. So sometimes when you have limited resources in Confines, we again had limited resources. We had 2 actors, Vivian and Luke, and there's a scene with a boy. Originally, I was going to have him come out of the dark, just his face come out and go, oh God, we haven't got that much. So we had this toy car, so I went off and bought for a £5 little metal toy boy and put it down there. It saved us hundreds of pounds. Just doing that. But creatively, it's pretty cool. Sometimes you come up with these ideas and you think, I wonder if this is going to work, but they seem to have worked. So, nice one, thank you.
It had another bonus, that ethos. So yeah, so obviously saved a lot of time and money, but it also had the effect of not giving you a clear chronology of censure. So are we watching, does this scene follow this scene? Does this scene follow this scene? Or is he remembering this? Or is he imagining this? Because no one else is there. It could all be in his head, right? That was a lovely thing I explored with the editing. In fact, we did end up moving a couple of scenes around because they made more sense out of sequence than they did in, which incredibly upset AD because he'd already done the music, and I thought, you just take the editing pictures, you just pick them out of the timeline and you move them over and put a thing. Isn't that what you do with the music? No, it isn't, apparently. But I think it worked. And I think it was worth doing, so thank you.
Wonderful. Well, thank you all so much for coming. Please join me in thanking Richard, John,